Hi, very good morning. I'm Dr. Janak Patel, MD, General Physician. All my video lectures are mainly for educative purpose. They will be very useful to fourth year students, exam going students for theory, for practical exams, as well as it will be useful for internship also. Today we are going to discuss regarding one of the another interesting topic you will see in your everyday practice, that is epistaxis. The meaning is very simple. Epistaxis means bleeding from the nose. From nasal cavity, if you get a bleeding, it is described as an epistaxis. As routine, we'll be discussing under all this heading: definition, etiology, pathophysiology, clinical features, investigations, differential diagnosis, treatment and complications. By definition, it is bleeding from nasal cavity. It is one of the most frequent cause of bleeding. By and large, it is self-limiting, but can be serious and sometimes life-threatening. So, epistaxis should never be treated as an harmless event. So, do remember, it can be sometimes lethal. By and large, we classify into mild, moderate and severe. Second way, depending upon the quantity, we are describing into mild, moderate and severe. And depending upon the site, if it is bleeding from the little's area, we call anterior. And if it is from the posterior area, we call posterior. Or sometimes you get both together and maybe from any other sites. Depending upon the etiology, we divide into primary versus secondary. Also, it can be divided into local and systematic causes. We'll be going through one by one. So, clinical classification divided into primary, secondary. When you don't have any specific etiology identified, we usually label that as primary. And when there is a clear-cut etiology, we call as a secondary. Depending upon the age, less than 16, it is called childhood. More than 16, it is called adult. If bleeding is from the anterior to the pyriform aperture, it is called anterior, and bleeding is posterior to pyriform aperture, it is called posterior. Primary is almost 70 to 80% of the time spontaneous bleeding without any proven precipitating or causal factors. While in secondary, there is a clear-cut and definitive cause, like say maybe traumatic, maybe hypertension, etc. Hence, depending upon the etiology, the treatment will change. Site-wise, Little's area is almost 90% of the time, and depending upon the level, by and large it is a middle turbinate, maybe posterior part of the nasal cavity, or maybe diffuse from septum and lateral wall also. So depending upon the site, we label anterior, posterior, or depending upon these different areas. So anterior, superior, inferior and posterior. Anterior is mainly Little's area. Superior is anterior ethmoidal area, that is above the middle turbinate. Inferior is greater palatine artery, and posterior is sphenopalatine, bleeding in below the anterior half of the middle turbinate. So it is divided into anterior and posterior. Anterior is from Little's area and posterior is from this area. That is what we called as sphenopalatine artery, bleeding from the posterior pharynx, signifies the bleeding in the posterior pharynx. 90% of the time it is from anterior area. It is called as a Kisselbach's plexus. It is very common in younger children. Typically, usually self-limiting, so it is less severe. There is a constant ooze rather than the profuse pumping of the blood. While in case of a posterior, it is from Woodruff's plexus. It is more common in older age groups. It is usually profuse, prolonged, and more difficult to control, and it may require sometimes surgical intervention. It is associated with bleeding from both nostrils. There is a greater flow of blood into the mouth, that is posteriorly, greater risk of airway compromise and aspiration of blood. So that will be the presentation in a posterior bleeding. If we go through the etiology, the most common cause is idiopathic. And second group we call as a local or generalized. In local, it may be idiopathic or maybe because of congenital, traumatic etiology, inflammatory etiology, or neoplastic. While in general, we'll be discussing in second. So depending upon that, you will have to try to identify the etiology. So in local, traumatic, infection, foreign body, neoplasm, atmospheric changes, deviated nasal septum, and maybe a congenital etiology. While in general groups, cardiovascular condition like say hypertension, sudden shoot up of blood pressure, blood disorders like bleeding disorders, hemophilia, and other coagulative disorders. In liver, chronic liver failure. In kidney, CKD. Drugs like aspirin, antiplatelet, anticoagulants, mediastinal compression, or vicarious menstruation. And 90% of the time it is idiopathic. Among cardiovascular, hypertension, mitral stenosis comes topmost on the list, and even atherosclerosis. While in a blood disorder, aplastic anemia, leukemia, hemophilia. Among liver disease, chronic liver disease, particularly cirrhosis of liver. Among drugs, we have already mentioned aspirin, clopidogrel, that is antiplatelet drugs, and anticoagulants. Among kidney disorders, mainly CKD. Among mediastinal compression, tumors. And general infection like influenza, chickenpox, malaria, or vicarious menstrual period. So among systemic cause, hypertension is the most common. In other cardiac etiology, mitral stenosis and congestive heart failure. Among respiratory, COPD. Liver disorders, cirrhosis because of vitamin K deficiency. And also it can be because of obstructive pathology in biliary passage, that is we call biliary obstructions. Among renal, nephritis and CKD. Drugs we already mentioned, anticoagulants and salicylates. Once in a while, in case of immunosuppression drugs, chloramphenicol, which will produce thrombocytopenia, or any condition which produces thrombocytopenia. Coagulopathies. Among hormonal, vicarious menstrual, endometriosis, granuloma gravidarum, hypothyroidism, and we have already mentioned idiopathic, which is accounting for almost 90% of the group. So site-wise, the most common is Little's area, that is from anteriorly, and usually you come across epistaxis coming from the anterior nostril. And in a posterior variety, it is from Woodruff's plexus. This is called Kisselbeck plexus. So from Little's area, usually you will have bleeding anteriorly, while when it is from posterior area, then bleeding will be posterior. It will be post-nasal drip. Chances of aspiration will be more likely. So When it is from sphenopalatine artery, there is more likely to be posterior bleeding. This is, I'm not going into detail regarding the blood supply of the nasal cavity, different blood supply of an entire nasal cavity. As far as the clinical features is concerned, 90% of time it is an anterior nasal septum, and the commonest cause is trauma because of a dry atmosphere or a hot atmosphere and infections. While posterior is usually secondary due to thrombocytopenia or anticoagulant therapy or bleeding disorders, hypertension, diabetes, etc. And we already mentioned that it is usually severe, continuous and prolonged bleeding, and more common in older, while this is more common in younger individuals. So posterior bleeding is usually more serious because there is continuous bleeding and you might even aspirate and get asphyxia. So this is anterior bleeding and this is posterior bleeding. So anterior epistaxis is more common while posterior is less common. Site wise we have already mentioned this is from Little's area. This is from posterior superior part of the nasal cavity. This is more common in children and younger adults. This is in older groups. Most common etiology is traumatic, dry weather and infections. While this is spontaneous and more common with hypertension, congestive heart failure, those groups. Usually this is anterior is usually mild, while this is severe, persistence and with little complications. You have to look at the periphery for petechial hemorrhages. This will be more common with thrombocytopenia and bleeding disorders. You look for the small petechial bleedings. It will help you to identify. So patient history is very important. Then go for physical examination and then followed by laboratory investigations. In patient history, bleeding, ask the history of bleeding disorders, hypertension, look for any finding of atherosclerosis, traumatic history, any history of drug intake, and ask a history of recurrent bleeding. Among physical examination, monitor the vital signs, examine for respiratory, cardiovascular and abdominal examination, and have a good examination of nasal cavity. This is foreign body, long-standing foreign body giving rise to damage to the nasal mucosa. So foreign body becomes one of the common cause in children. This is rhinolith. You can see this leading to damage. This is a septal hemangioma. This is a polyp. You can see this is hereditary telangiectasia. These are all telangiectasia, and that can have also in the nasal cavity. This is again that, and you can see also on the palm or over the hand. This is over the face. This is over the lip. This is malignancy. Malignancy. So look for those. This is, you can make out from where the bleeding is coming. External carotid artery arteriogram will tell you the bleeding site, and then you can go for surgical intervention if it is uncontrolled. And among the laboratory tests, CBC will help you to identify thrombocytopenia. Bleeding time and clotting time will help you to find out whether it is a primary disorders or a clotting disorders. If bleeding time is prolonged, it is more in case of a platelet disorders, while clotting time will be more prolonged in case of a coagulative disorders. Prothrombin time will be very helpful in finding out the liver pathology and the person who are on vitamin K agonist antagonist, vitamin K antagonist like warfarin, while APTT, activated partial thromboplastin time, that will be very useful in a person who are on oral anticoagulants. To rule out CKD, you will have to go for renal function test like blood urea, creatinine, and also liver function test will be very helpful. And you will have to, in a liver function test, you will have to add PT and INR. And if you are suspecting clotting factors, then you will have to go for a clotting factor studies. So local examination. Now fiber optic examination is very useful to find out the site, and you can have a local therapy. X-ray of paranasal sinus will help you to find out infection, malignancy, any traumatic injury, and also it will help you to find out is there any involvement of the paranasal sinus. CT, MRI for sinus and nasal bones will be helpful to find out the site as well as the probable etiology. Biopsy will be required in case of a suspected malignancy. And we have already mentioned regarding the laboratory parameters. So complete blood count, blood grouping cross matching, because person who gets a persistence and long standing bleeding may require a blood transfusion. Renal function test, diabetes, liver function test, all to find out the etiology. And peripheral blood smear to find out thrombocytopenia and other blood disorders which can result into epistaxis. We already mentioned regarding a prothrombin time, INR, APTT, APTT for person who are on anticoagulants, nasal endoscopy, angiography to find out the site, and to have pre-surgical investigations. You should try to find out whether it is traumatic, infections, hypertension, malignancy, polyp, bleeding disorders. If all these causes are ruled out, it is more in favor of idiopathic. Almost it is 90% of time. Management will depend upon the etiology. First, you have to assess the general condition of the patient to find out whether he is stable or unstable. And if he is having a persistent bleeding, you must try to arrest the bleeding and treat the underlying cause, whatever is the etiology. So always it is said that first aid should be given and resuscitation should be started. So usually you look for what we call as airway, breathing and circulation, and make the patient stable. During that particular, neck should not be hyperextended to prevent the blood flow into the stomach and possible aspiration. So this should be taken care. There is something called as a Trotter's triad, that is blood in the mouth should not be swallowed. Mouth breathing, direct pressure over the cartilaginous part of the nose, and it should be applied for minimum 5 to 10 minutes. By that time, by and large, the bleeding stops. A gauze which is moist with epinephrine may be placed to promote vasoconstriction, may be utilized. But see that you don't utilize more quantity of epinephrine, which can lead to complications. So for assessing the general condition, blood pressure, pulse, hemoglobin, hematocrit, and look for signs of shock or hypovolemia. To arrest the bleeding, pressure on the nose, decongestant, local decongestant. If it is still not controlled, then you can go for cauterization, nasal packing, and last resort, embolization and ligation of blood vessels, surgical intervention. Topical vasoconstriction are very effective. Good number of time it is controlled by this, where otrivin or xylomethazine or cocaine is being utilized. If that is not effective, then you go for a chemical cauterization, particularly with silver nitrate stick or thermal cauterization. But during this, always see that you don't create complications like septal necrosis and perforation. So this should be taken care. Prevention is always better. So control of hypertension, correction of bleeding disorders, humidifier atmosphere, nasal saline spray, ointments. You can utilize Vaseline. Avoid hard nose blowing or sneezing. Sneeze with the mouth open. Avoid nose pricking. Control the use of medications which you are taking which are likely to produce complications. So depending upon the severity of the bleeding, after evacuating nose using decongestants, identify the bleeding sites. If it is anterior and if it is severe, usually cautery is utilized or anterior packing is being done. And whenever anterior pack does not work, then you might go for ligation and embolization. In a moderate bleeding, by and large the cautery anterior pack is enough. You may require cauterization. And in a mild variety, by and large anterior pack is being enough, and if that anterior pack does not work, then only cauterization is being utilized, and you might go for even medical therapy. While in a posterior bleeding, by and large in a mild variety, medical therapy followed by endoscopic cauterization. If it fails, then you can go for endoscopic cauterization, and then you can go for ligation and embolization. But if it is a severe bleeding, anterior plus posterior. Posterior is first slide, then you can combine posterior with anterior. If it doesn't work out, go for ligation and embolization. There is something called as a definitive management, like direct therapy, cauterization, which can be chemical or electrical, direct pressure, and endoscopic control, where you can utilize chemical or electrical cauterization. As far as surgical is concerned, posterior nasal packing, ligation. I am not expert as far as this type of treatment. These are all special treatment or we call surgical interventions. And as far as the indirect therapy is concerned, nasal packing, which is very commonly utilized as anterior packing, hot water irrigation. Then you can use the medical drugs like tranexamic acid or epsilon aminocaproic acid. You can use vitamin C, vitamin K, and if it is an infective pathophysiology, antibiotics. And very rarely you require a fresh blood transfusion if person is having massive bleeding. So one of the management is direct, identify the bleeding spot, and endoscopic control, bipolar diathermy or chemical, or direct pressure, or silver nitrate cautery. And indirect method do not require the identification of bleeding points. For immediate control, pressure, ice cold packs, Trotler's method, packing of the nose, packing of the postnasal space, sedatives, and systemic antibiotics. As far as first aid is concerned, always Trotler's position and pinch the nose. And pinching of the nose is very important. This is the proper method. So this is a proper method of pinching. So you can utilize ice or cold applications and pinching of the nose for a minute. Very important. Proper pinching is very important. And while pinching, sit and lean forward slightly. That is another important thing you have to keep it in mind. Then you can go for an anterior packing. Anterior packing. There are different techniques. This is one of the technique. You can go for anterior packing. This is another way of packing. This is a full anterior nasal pack. This is posterior nasal packing. And this is using a Foley's catheter or a nasal balloons. These are those particular packings. These are Foley's catheter. This is a nasal balloon pack. So you can utilize a Foley's catheter along with the anterior packing. This is Foley's catheter. So this will act as a posterior and this will act as an anterior. So these are the things which are utilized for posterior packing. And then if cautery doesn't work, ligation of internal maxillary artery. As far as complication is concerned, by and large in posterior there may be severe bleeding, and if person aspirates hypoxia and he can develop hypercarbia. Good number of time person will have a infective pathophysiology like sinusitis or otitis media, that is quite common, and while doing a cauterization, necrosis of the area where you are doing a cautery is most likely. So while doing that, take that care. Another complication of nasal packing, complication of epistaxis and nasal packing, rhinosinusitis, cardiovascular compromise, septal perforation, toxic shock syndrome, hypoxia, aspiration pneumonia, cardiovascular associated embolization, recurrent epistaxis, rebleeding on nasal pack removal, etc. are quite common. This is just roughly the outline of epistaxis. I'm not an ENT expert, but I've given you a rough idea. What is epistaxis? What are the common causes? What is the classification? What is the common treatment? What way they can present? So it will be useful to you in your oral as well as theory. And also once in a while you see this patient in your everyday practice. Try to identify that it is idiopathic or it is secondary, and depending upon that you can refer to an ENT person. So I end my lecture here. If you like this lecture, please press button like and subscribe, and you can share with your friends. At the end of this lecture, I say thank you for taking out time. I know that your time is very valuable, and I always appreciate you for spending some of the time with me. See you in next lecture.